A new world and a new school, teaching and learning during and after the pandemic. What needs to change in education? How will the online world transform the peer relations as we know them today? Are we competent enough to navigate digital education and how to gain necessary skills? And finally, what is a new role of school and parents in education? These are essential points for millions of teachers and students around the world. Let's talk about it. Digital well-being and cybersecurity. Join me and my guests for the online debate.
Jenna Melanken, Catherine McCracken, Rachel Henriks, Anna Rybczyńska, Łukasz Gierek and Marcin Mechla.
Questions that matter and points that can make a change.
Consulate of the United States, Cities on Internet Association, Gulf Coast Diplomacy and Alumni Association.
Join us and share your point of view. And you can do it now. So what is the COVID and post-COVID experience of K12 schools in Poland and in the US? Hello and welcome to this debate. This is a forum where we discuss issues that are critically important for schools and education during this extraordinary time of the new normal being born. Still a lot of questions, open questions that await reasonable answers. But if they are to take us to, as societies, to a better future, they need to be well grounded and based on real challenges as we can identify them. We examine these challenges and come up with conclusions, not only for educators, also, but not only for educators, but also for those who make decisions on political level. So we take it a step forward. Last time we talked about remote learning in various aspects. This time we will focus on something that lies at the very, very heart of the new digital education, that is digital well-being and cybersecurity. So this debate is organized by Cities on Internet Association in partnership with Consulate General of the United States in Kraków, as well as Gulf Coast Diplomacy, NUSC, and Alumni Association. And what's important, the outcome of this series will become a report, finally, that will, I hope at least, be looked by the authorities that are responsible for designing and organizing education, both in Poland and in the US. So what is the psychological cost of lockdown? How do we cater for our digital well-being? How to support teachers and students, of course, or just to look at it from a bit of a different perspective. Did anyone actually gain anything on COVID? Let's find out. Let me open this discussion with an introduction from Amy Steinman from the American Consulate, who's with us and joined us today. Hello, Amy. Nice to see you again.
You too, Greg. Thank you so much.
Hi. Hello.
Hello, everyone. So good afternoon, good day on behalf of the U.S. Consulate in Krakow. It's truly a pleasure to be with you and to introduce today's virtual discussion on a very critical and timely topic affecting students, youth, and educators worldwide. Digital technologies have played a truly transformative role in the pandemic, and we are incredibly fortunate that despite these difficult and challenging times, we have the technology and the platforms which have enabled us to maintain connections, to continue educating our students, to telework, and to conduct important business, all virtually from our own homes. Digital technologies expand the boundaries of information, enable users to contribute to the knowledge economy, and enhance our productivity. But they can also carry significant risks for people's well-being, especially students and youth. The threats include everything from cyberbullying to breaches of online security and privacy. So the question is, how do we harness the benefits of digital technology while mitigating the risks? How do we help our students build healthy digital habits and be responsible digital learners? Educators and educational institutions certainly have a role to play in helping students manage their online lives. We need to build our capacity to better teach students the critical thinking, media literacy, and communication skills that they need to flourish online. So I'm really looking forward to hearing these ideas discussed, debated, and dissected over the next hour and a half. And I'm especially pleased to have American panelists represented here, sharing their experiences and best practices with Polish counterparts and vice versa. Because despite the distances between us, we are all united by these common experiences, these universal challenges, and hopefully by mutual solutions. So Greg, I'll turn it over to you, and I look forward to hearing from the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Amy. That was Amy Stein, and nice of you to join us each time we do these debates. Thanks very much. Now, here's a team of our speakers today, excellent speakers. Jenna Melanchon, the founder and executive director, Gulf Coast Diplomacy. Hello, Jenna. Can we hear each other? Yeah, well, you need to unmute yourself. Yes. That's fine. Perfect. Catherine McCracken, top 10 international baccalaureate program graduate, and I have just learned doing theatre and politics. Yes? Do you remember it correctly?
Yes, correct. That's correct.
Rachel Hendricks, executive director of international affairs for the University of West Florida's Division of Academic Engagement and Student Affairs. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Nanna Rywczyńska from Poland, head of the Digital Education Department at NUSK and coordinator of the Polish Safer Internet Center. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Łukasz Gierek, MIE expert and a teacher at the same time at the Radom Technical School. Hello, Łukasz.
Hello.
And Marcin Mechla, ICT expert for Cities on Internet Association. So hello. We are all there for the debate to start, and we kick off with a short presentation about the subject from each side, sort of about 10-minute presentation. And on the Polish side, we've got Ania Rywczyńska, the head of the Digital Education Department at NUSK, with a bunch of information for us. All right?
Okay. Let me show you some slides. Okay. I miss so much the moment from the far past when you've been showing presentation, you could see some people on the other side.
Believe me, we are here. We are here.
Yeah, now I need to believe you and feel that you are there. So hello everyone, thank you so much for having me here. It's a great pleasure to be here in such a great company. I represent NUSK, and NUSK is one of the most active actors in Poland in fields of internet safety and security, and among many other activities also coordinates Polish Safer Internet Center, which is a European project aimed at raising awareness in internet safety and also fighting with illegal content. And I'm telling that because most of the data that I will be showing now comes from this project activities, also the awareness part and the illegal content reactions and reports. I would like to divide my short presentation into 3 areas, and one area will be about online threats. Second area will be about the online life in the age of COVID-19, and also the third part will be about the well-being. And I would like to start with some identified risk factors, which unfortunately have reflected, are reflected in the statistics that you can see below. So definitely now we talk about the increased risk of exposure to harmful contact via social media, in-app chats, online games. The loneliness and isolation of children have absolutely the potential to expose them to people who would like to use them also in a sexual way. Spending more time online, often without responsible supervision of adults, of parents, of teachers, can foster also child grooming as well as sexual extortion. And now also in a pandemic condition, it's much more difficult to see that something bad is happening with a child because kids are excluded from social contacts, they don't participate in school activities, and usually, especially in Poland, the school is a place when most of cases mostly domestic violence are often identified. And here you can see the compared data from 2019 and 2020 in context of CSAM, which is child sexual abuse materials, reported to Polish hotline existing in NASK in frames of Polish Safer Internet Center and responding to the illegal content. So here you can see the increase by nearly 10%, and it's very important because it happened despite a 12% lower number of received reports. So here we have increased in these reports about child sexual abuse materials. And also we have a very sad phenomenon as well, self-generated content. This is the content produced by kids, by young people, but of course we are not saying it's a voluntary produced. Usually it happens because of some adult pushing. So the number of such incidents also increased from 202 in 2019 to 355. So it's also a big increase. And now staying in the area of online threats, but now moving to the school reality, I would like also to show, tell you something about the cases that happened at schools, and it was the new challenge for Polish schools. This phenomena came from the gaming environment. But here also, especially in the first few months of the remote learning, we could see the abuses that happened during online lessons. So the examples of that were playing loud music during lessons, malicious comments, mocking speakers, modifications of recorded materials, both about teachers, but also including students. So it were the examples of cyberbullying, and also the most dangerous, like sharing pornography, also hard, drastic materials, presenting nudity, and so and etc. These risks were cited. I put here the name of the report done by the University of Warsaw. These risks were cited as the greatest threats related to distance learning, both by teachers and children. And of course, in months, I'm sure that some people representing schools in this debate will have much more to say about that during the conversation. But in months, teachers learned how to deal with this. Like, I mean, they were able to use some technical solutions, but at the beginning, it was very, very disturbing in Polish schools. Okay, moving. And talking about online practices, somehow we have to say that our life moved in front of the screen. And also it caused some problems that we see, especially with children and young people. Time. Now I would like firstly to focus on time. We have 65% of children that spend more than 6 hours a day in front of the computer. And 20% of them spend even 8 hours. And there is a huge group as well that spend 12 hours daily. And these are really little kids, I mean, from primary schools, also coming to the secondary school. But these are kids like 11, 12, 13 years old. It comes from the newest report done by NASK, Teenagers 3.0 from 2020. That long time in front of the screen also causes addictions. We have 21% of teenagers that have a high FOMO rate, and FOMO is the fearing of missing off. So these are kids that cannot go offline. They feel like they will lose something. It's very difficult for them to switch off their smartphone. Over 45% believe that they have been using smartphone for too long, and over 21% have tried to reduce this time, but without success. And also very important data, activity balance, up to 20% less physical activities. It also concerns adults, but especially here in our concern are young people and children. And third area, well-being. I think now in Poland we are in a really difficult situation. We are struggling, like most of the world, I guess. We are struggling the third wave. We are struggling with the third lockdown. People are very tired. It's necessary to say that for last months, it was an absolute digital revolution in Poland, and internet was absolutely our ally. And I would like to show here this data about over 80% of children that say that they used internet to keep relations with friends and family. Usually they would say they would keep relations with peers, but here also in these latest reports, they stressed they kept relations with their closest ones in their life. So it was like something that saved us somehow, like Amy said in the very beginning. But at the same time, we have to go deeper into the results. We see 45% of young people that see no difference in relationship. And then 25% see even improvement, and about 17% see deterioration. And from this data, and it's repeated in many reports they've seen, in this data, we can see the huge responsibility on adults, because we can see that both options were possible. You could reach something from this situation, but also you could lose. And now we have to focus on this more dark side of the situation. Every fourth high school student feels sad, lonely, depressed, and like wanting to cry. Nearly 10% show clear symptoms of depression. But look here, 65% of teachers and more than half of parents, they say they feel worse mentally than before the pandemic. And I think this is the area that we have to be really focused on, because we cannot talk about well-being of kids, forgetting about the well-being of adults. It's like in a plane. First, you have to take care of yourself, and then you will be able to take care of your kid. So I think this is the area that I hope during this debate we will also give some time. For me, it's really crucial. So thank you so much. I hope it was fast enough.
Yeah, that was absolutely perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And on the American side, Rachel Hendricks. But what you have to do is you have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you because you switched your mic.
Okay.
That's good.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you for having me. I represent the Office of International Affairs here at the University of West Florida in Pensacola, Florida. And so my dealings typically are with international students or students that are studying abroad, also instruction of students at higher education level. So I've listed here some of the points that I think have been some of the greatest impacts of COVID-19 on education. And I think I can speak for everyone when I say we've used the word unprecedented more this last year than we probably ever have in our lives, right? So this has really been a time of being nimble and adjusting to all of these changes and trying to make the best of what we have available to us. So one of the first things I thought of was, the reduced instructional and learning time that students are having. Class meetings may not be meeting the full recommended credit hour per week because of the limitations to online learning. In addition to the shutdowns, which initially we were shut down for 2 weeks, so no learning was going on. There was, a gap in developing online courses on the fly. Some instructors did not have the training or the knowledge to create those courses. In addition to just the shutdown itself, I think the U.S. has kind of been plagued with a number of natural disasters. I know in Pensacola in September, we experienced a hurricane, which kind of knocked us out for a couple of weeks. People didn't have power. We couldn't get to class. We couldn't turn on our computer to do online instruction. But there's been a number of things like snowstorms and other issues all across the states that have been problematic in terms of access to online instruction. And of course, we can't forget the psychological impacts that Anna spoke of earlier. Social and emotional interaction are an important part of education, especially for the K through 12 students. Although it might be secondary to the academic side, it's certainly a critical skill that students are learning by being involved and working with their peers. And what I've seen too, with in terms of the knowledge of moving course platforms online, is that the training has been more geared toward the instructor and less toward the student. And I think that maybe in our ignorance, we think that these millennials and these young students have all of the skills to go online and be able to to do this successfully, but there's still a gap in knowledge for students returning to online courses. Many of them who just are fearful of it in general. They don't like the discussion forums. They want the face-to-face interaction. And so I think we really need to do a better job in training our students as well as our faculty and instructors. For my office in particular, the limitations to mobility have been very difficult because I'm working with an international population who is unable to enter the United States due to the visa offices, consular offices not giving visas right now, or there being travel restrictions. When this all hit last March, we had students that were abroad that we had to repatriate and bring back because they were studying abroad, some of who couldn't get back in because they were foreign nationals. And this is still hitting us. I think some recent data came out from the Department of Homeland Security that said 72% enrollment was down with new international students by 72% in the US last fall. So this is a tremendous financial impact to a number of institutes of higher education as well. And I think as we move on through this discussion, we'll also highlight some of the benefits and some of the things that we've learned, the lessons learned, and the things that we may want to continue to incorporate as we move along. But I wanted to show this graphic that gives you an idea of, which states are open. And I think, we are the United States of America, but we may not be united in our opinion of, what should be open and what should not. And I think you can see here, Florida has had a very sort of lenient, relaxed response to COVID in general. And even when this hit, many students had the choice of doing fully face-to-face courses, a hybrid model where they could do some face-to-face, some online, or fully online. It's kind of been up to the parents' discretion. But for fall of 2021, there is a mandate to reopen all of the schools. And then finally, I've listed some resources here. These are geared mainly toward higher ed, but all of them list ways in which you can assist your students and have better studying habits for students during this pandemic, and how we can make the best of what we've been given. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rachel. So we've got about 50 or so minutes to discuss it. Basically, lots of whatever you said in your presentation is actually quite a worrying point to consider. Psychological impact of lockdowns. What really happened? What really happened, or what is really happening to students when they are at home and trying to battle with this new environment and new phenomenon? Maybe let's start from Marcin. He knows a lot about it. First-hand experience, I would say.
Yes, that's true. Thank you. Let me share a few thoughts. Well, I'm going to speak from the perspective of a father, mostly, but also a bit of a teacher, because, well, it's connected. There are many different aspects that should be taken into consideration. All the beginnings were quite difficult, starting with the amount of equipment necessary at home, the quality of the internet connection, which in some cases was quite easy to upgrade, but not in every household. It was the time devoted to children that children who required help, the know-how, how to use all the applications, how to help children. And of course, the biggest problem was with the first, the second, the third grade students, the youngest kids. We're going to discuss this learning loss later on, but many people argue whether there is the learning loss, what is actually lost, or is it just the lack of learning? Well, this is, for me as a parent, it's just the semantics. It doesn't matter what you call it, but the problem exists.
But there's a loss.
Yeah, the loss. And in case of those kids, what was really lost, and I know it from the experience, is a lot of different skills, literacy, the ability to write. They started their first year in September, then in March, they were locked at home. They lost some fluency. This is the age where a huge...
But you're quite special, Marcin, because you're a parent and you're a teacher at the same time.
Yes.
And we've had this year, like the last 12 months to actually sort it out. do you have a feeling you could actually somehow square the circle and try to help your kids and perhaps by that experience other kids as well to make up for it, to somehow cope with the situation?
Well, it's very difficult how to cope with the situation, but first I believe we should start with helping the teachers, those who are not prepared to deliver lessons, to deliver classes to those kids. Basically those kids were not fluent enough to operate computers. They required assistance. There was a lot of stress when they couldn't connect with their teacher. At the same time, the technical problems were on daily basis. They happened every day. Those teachers who...
And you didn't have any help, did you?
Well, I did at some point, but I tried to help teachers in my children's school, and we are constantly in contact. But you know, there are all the other teachers around Poland who required that help. So the success of our children depends really on this computer literacy of those teachers, of those skills. So we started with a lot of problems. They do teach some coding at this level. They have computer classes, but this is nothing compared to remote learning. Can
I just pop in for a second and ask our American friends, how long were you locked up, or how many? We had 3 times, you know, there's like 3 major lockdowns. We were in one of them now. How long were you sort of out of the... Anybody?
Well, I think, I can't remember the exact date, but it was sometime in the summer, I believe. Is that right, Gina? That the state of Florida went on a lockdown, and I think it was about a month, but it wasn't a full lockdown. So there were, you know, restaurants could operate at a certain capacity, grocery stores, you know, there were a number of service sort of businesses that were on full lockdown, but you still saw people walking around in the streets. But, you know, during September, I was in Boston, and it was a completely different experience in a different state. Everyone was wearing masks, even on the street. So again,
right. So we are in that way, we're different because our rules are universal all across our country, all across Poland, and it's different in different states in the United States.
Correct.
I imagine. All right. Sorry, Martin, for that interruption.
Okay, no problem. So we parents started with getting a lot of exercises, homework, usually via email. So we had to work with our children. Basically, we were supposed to teach them. It has some positive aspects too, because some of the parents realized how difficult it was to teach their own kids, right? But yeah, it required a lot of time. I'll give you an example I read recently. There's this computer programmer who is quite okay working from home, but his son is a first grade student. So he has classes every day. Usually the lesson lasts about 20 minutes, which is okay for small children. But then he has like 20, 25, 30 minutes of a break when the child is quite bored. So obviously the son interrupts with his work. So he and other parents organized, and they deliver 4-5 children to one of the homes, and they swap each day. It's different parents, so in this way they can work properly 4 days a week. And during the day when they do have children at home, the kids can play with each other. That's obvious, yes. So it's a win-win situation. But there's many different parents, like those called helicopter parents, who are always at home, always there for their children. They not only listen to all of the lessons, but in the worst case scenario, they interrupt lessons. They undermine the teacher. And well, this is where the problems start. If you have a problem with the teacher, then there are some other ways of communicating with schools, with the principal, etc., not during the lessons. Yeah. How is the teacher supposed to maintain his authority, the respect?
Before we go into teachers, let's just concentrate just for a few more minutes on the students. I mean, what is their mental state now? I don't know whether you can tell a difference between what's happening in Poland and what's happening in the United States, but the numbers, the statistics, from my country, from Poland, is really, really alarming. What about the United States? What is the mental condition of, maybe Catherine, what do you think? Do you have any data on that, or do you know anything about that particular aspect?
I don't know any data, but I can certainly speak to my experience and that of my friends. We all finished our final year of high school and moved on to college over this past year. And that has honestly proved to be a huge challenge. Most of us have experienced quite a bit of isolation. I know that I personally am still largely in a group with my old high school friends, whereas normally I would have developed quite a number of friends at my university, which, considering I'm not in the same state, has not exactly happened. So it's certainly proved to be a challenge in terms of various colleges where they are much more hands-off. And I'm very fortunate in that at my college, we already have quite a bit of hands-on experience with our teachers, individual meetings, which has helped me greatly from what I've heard.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, is there any idea in your head and perhaps in your thinking, how can we handle that crisis in the mental state of thousands, if not millions, of youngsters, young people, pupils? How to even start addressing this problem? Anybody?
Well, I can speak for my institution, and speaking of data, some of the recent surveys, I think it was about 150 students or 150 institutions were surveyed, and they showed a 39% increase in anxiety issues across campuses across the U.S. So that's huge, right? I mean, it's nearly
absolutely.
Right? So I think that one of the things that many psychological services have been doing, especially on campuses, is offering a way for students to seek services in an online format. So again, their hands are kind of tied in doing these online sessions, but these sessions are geared more toward depression and anxiety issues, which are where we're really seeing most of the psychological issues. Anecdotally, I can say that our wait times to see a counselor here on campus is like 2 to 3 weeks, which is unheard of. And so apart from that, I think, a lot of our student organizations, a lot of our community organizations are trying to reach out to students to rid them of that feeling of isolation. But unfortunately, it exists in a format much like this. The state of Florida has recently opened up where we can have group meetings. I think it was 10, a group of 10 allowed. Now it's up to 25, or will be up to 25. So just for instance, last week, our institution held a big comedy fest because everyone needs laughter right now. Online or not? It was outdoors.
It was outdoors.
In a big, baseball field. And they practiced social distancing. We had masks. We had people out there monitoring them. They got the opportunity to laugh at some jokes.
Florida is quite liberal about these restrictions, as we've heard.
Yes, we are a bit.
we tend not to be at the moment. Okay, what about
most of the country's divided on whether or not our governor's response was appropriate.
Of course. Our society is divided as well. It's just that we're not divided state-wise. Obviously, we're a smaller country. What about the Polish? What about the Polish side? I mean, any idea for how to systematically address this issue, which has grown to be a big problem for the school and for the parents and for the students as well, or pupils?
I don't have the answer how to cure the situation, but I think that it will something very deep for this generation. This experience will be very deep. I would like to comment on what Catherine said, because it was so much important that we have a whole year of teenagers, of young people who are losing more than a half of high school, who had no possibility to meet new colleagues, new friends from school. One person that I talked with recently said, "Okay, I'm in a high school already for 2 years, but I almost know nobody." And also, what they stress is that they lose some very important dates for them, like the party you have when you turn 18 in Poland. It's something very important. And there is
Anna, what kind of consequences do you think it might have on the future of those children? You might as well say it's just about a year. They've got lots of years in front of them. They can, make up for it.
That's why I try to search for something positive. I think it will be some kind of experience that will join them. That maybe they will be able to see the joy of the normal life. Maybe they will see the joy to be offline, probably, because before we were talking so much about how to bring kids offline because they're all the time online, and now they by themselves they stress, I want to be offline. Of course, they're, like I show on my slides, they are addicted. We see this problem, but also they have a very strong emotion to go offline, to go to people, to move into the real relations. So maybe it will be a kind of the wake up for them, how to appreciate normal life, not only in front of the screen.
All right, you have just started the second point that we would like to dwell on today, and it's about the online well-being. So basically, how do we take care of our well-being when we are online? It's a new ability, it's a new skill that we have to develop. It's something that we didn't really have to care so much about before the pandemic, but now it's a necessity. How to do that?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about what we're doing with the Youth Diplomats program in Pensacola. So I'm not a teacher. I run a nonprofit, but we also have a program that's a monthly program for teenagers. They get together. They used to get together in person to discuss global issues and leadership matters. Now, since March 2020, we pivoted and went online. Something that I noticed pretty much right away was that we were going to have to adjust what we were doing. So in person, we meet for 5 hours, one Saturday a month. And after 2 of our Saturday meetings, I was drained. So I knew that the students had to be trained as well.
That is who? Who's meeting?
So it's 24 high school students and then 2 adults.
All right.
And so what we had to do was start incorporating sufficient breaks and also to focus on some embodiment practices. So when we're having longer sessions, like this summer we had a camp that was several days long, we would have to take that time to encourage the students to stop, look across the room, find a corner, and look at it for a moment. And I read somewhere I read somewhere recently that for every 20 minutes that you're staring at the screen, you should take 20 seconds to look 20 feet away. I don't know how many meters that is, sorry. But just to have that break.
So forget about the 45-minute long lessons.
I'm sorry?
Forget about 45-minute long lessons online.
Right. So you have to have breaks, and you have to encourage students to get up and get their jiggles out and just do some kind of movement. But one thing that we're looking forward to doing as soon as we're able. So as Rachel mentioned, we had a hurricane, and it broke a bridge that connects our community and the community next door, and our students are in both communities. As soon as that bridge is repaired and we can get back together in person, we're looking to incorporate some outdoor activities, some volunteer activities where they can be socially distanced, and to have some time in nature, because I think that time spent in nature will help balance all of the technology that we're experiencing right now. And I think that has to have some mental health benefits as well.
All right, thank you. Maybe a Polish perspective, maybe even teacher's perspective from Poland. Łukasz?
Yeah, I can say something about that. Thank you. In my case, I love to coming back to school. As you see, I'm in the backside. You will see my class, and some of the students from my school, because I'm teaching in the high school, have a exam at the end of the semester of the school year, and they need to came to school to make some practice. And I see that those those well-being or I don't know. I see that they are smiling. They are working well. They have joy to be with friends and to be with me, to go out from own home. And that was said, Anna, before, that they can have joy to be offline.
Yeah,
So,
Łukasz, how did it change your perspective as a teacher to the teaching and learning process? How did it change you? What kind of different tools are you using? What kind of different techniques are you trying to incorporate? Or are you still in this moment of uncertainty, not really knowing which would be the best way to go?
No, my lessons, it's like online lessons always turn around comparing to typical ones. So, for example, if you are checking the list of the students, you need to do at the end of the lesson, not in the front of. So,
yeah.
So many of our teachers don't understand how it works and how we can organize our lesson plans, for example. So it'd be tricky, or it'd be something different between. But in my case, I don't have a problem with that. I'm like I'm an ICT teacher, so I often make plenty of the hours in the front of the monitor.
All right, can you just give us 3 simple examples of what changes did you introduce to your teaching after COVID?
Okay, so it was like using ICT tools, for example, during COVID. During my lessons, I need to move my lesson plan to online plan and find a tool to connect with teacher. The safety tool, I mean, like that, because one of our topics is like a cybersecurity. We need to find the tool which is correct or fit to our conversation. For example, Discord. Many of the Polish students Polish teacher try to connect with the Discord. It's not like a typical teacher's tool. I recommend Teams or even Zoom. Even Zoom, it's not like not like the same one, because it was like a Zoom link. Anna told us before about this question. So,
okay. So all right. So thing number 1 is the choice of a tool. That's right.
Yeah,
What else?
The second one is to move some kind of not feelings, some kind of things that we used to it in manual lesson to online lesson. For example, the raising hand tool in Teams. So I don't see my students who want to do it. I made some silly voting. For example, who of you doesn't agree that the number of the number of this not teacher, sorry, I forget the word in English.
What say in Polish? I'll help you.
Yeah, rozwiązanie. Rozwiązanie jest 24. Solution. Yes. Okay. So the solution will be 24 on 26. Who is agreed? So we can use the raise tool. We have many tools.
Right. So some kind of interface between a real physical interaction and an online expression. Okay, that's thing number 2, and thing number 3.
Thing number 3, it's like well-being. We need to know that the lesson online should be much more shorter than the lesson comparing to the manual lesson, to the typical one. Because they are learning.
Jenna has mentioned that. How long will that be? 20 minutes or what?
Yep.
In my case, it's around 25 till 30 minutes. I think
a bit longer than that.
Because they are learning in the front of the computer. They are making homework in the front of the computer. They have some kind of I don't know, games or free time.
I know 12 in some cases 12 hours in front of a computer. That's a bit too much. All right. Yeah. Any other ideas that we can share about how to translate online well-being in these difficult times? Any other ideas? Just to complement.
Yes. Well, it's up to. Yeah, all the regulations are up to individual schools in Poland. So only recently, my daughter's high school reduced the number of minutes of certain lessons. They've got like 45 minutes of Polish, English, mathematics. Physical education is shorter, arts is shorter, but it depends on which class you are in.
All right.
And also, well-being, the students' well-being depends on the use of microphones and cameras.
In what way?
Well, if you can turn off your camera, then you can move around your room. If you have some room, you can, stand up, stretch your legs. You can lie down. You can close your eyes. If you can turn off your microphone.
Well, okay, in other words, it's good for the teacher to allow students or pupils to turn off their cameras, but then but there's an aspect of control in some sort. Students.
But this is another big issue. This is like the renaissance of camera, because our system is exam oriented. There's always an exam ahead of you in Poland, right? And now Luke said there are exams where students have to come to school to attend, and this is great, but some of the exams are taken online. Well, and the teachers are going into extremes with the cameras, like you are allowed to look at the ceiling, you cannot look down because you might be reading some notes.
Yeah.
And these are the real examples from our life. Well, and because some students understand that the exams are not particularly important in their professional development, this is just for numbers, right? To get into university, but it's not really helpful in their real life. They sometimes do cheat. Well, but the paradox is that in order to cheat, they have to cooperate, they have to talk to friends, they have to prepare, they have to search for certain information.
All right, so what you're saying is that cheating is a very efficient educational tool.
Yes, exactly. It's more helpful in future career than just learning loads of data.
Very original.
Many educators understand or have seen cases of students who learned quite a lot, did well at school, but were not successful in future lives. Those who try to cheat, they assess the quality of information. They learn by themselves critical thinking, which might be very important in future.
Okay, what a question to our American friends. Do you have the feeling that it's going the right way, or what do you think about this idea? Perhaps it's a new look at things, and it's not, well, critically thinking. Perhaps it's a good idea. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I'm not going to be in the pro-cheating camp here, but sorry. But I did want to ask Catherine something very quickly, because talking about how the changes in the classroom, I'm wondering, Catherine, if last year when you were in high school, did your teachers incorporate Kahoot at all into the platform? Because we've used Kahoot in Youth Diplomats and found that gamification, that little bit of fun adds a social element that we didn't have before, and it's really needed.
Right.
For me, Kahoot had been used quite frequently prior to the pandemic. We didn't end up using it a ton during the last couple months of high school, but that is absolutely something that I would advocate for. Having any sort of built-in social interactions amongst the students, which can be difficult to integrate into the classroom, but it's still incredibly important right now, more so than ever. And that is an excellent way of having both a little fun and testing students, seeing how they're doing and seeing where they need to improve.
Whatever you're saying or describing the new tools and techniques, do you think they are just a temporary way to deal with the problems? Or are they a part of a stable solution for the future?
Well, in our case, when we're allowed to go back in person, we will, but we won't do it until 2022, because I made a commitment to some of the students in our program who are calling in from overseas to be part of our youth education program, that will be online. But definitely once we're able to go in person, we're definitely not getting rid of what we've learned. And I think that we'll have some kind of hybrid program so that we can bring in students from areas of the United States and areas of the world that we weren't able to reach otherwise.
But are we just in front of a necessity to completely change the methodology of teaching in the future? Łukasz is nodding.
Yeah, in my opinion, this is the right place and time to change our way of teaching, because a lot of skills that we have earned, I mean, like digital skills, most of the teachers need to move from their own comfort zones and try to do something more, or try to make the lessons more attractive. And this is the time and place, in my opinion, that we should say stop and do something from the new beginning.
If I could add something to what Łukasz said, basing on the research, on the reports that we have in Poland, over 40%, if I remember correctly, 40% of teachers is open to go to the hybrid learning. So they would really like still to use those technologies, those techniques that they learned in the past months. And I think it's very optimistic. Of course, the majority would like to go offline and to go to the normal school, but still keep the competences they reached in last months. And if I can add also one short thing, I think it's also crucial when we talk about those cameras, microphones used during remote lessons. It's crucial to have a consent. When we speak to teachers and to young people, they need a common consent. The teacher must explain why it's important for her, him, to see pupils. And even about us adults, it's so nicer to talk when I see you now. I can feel your emotions. I can see if my information reached you. And if I cannot see you, I don't know if I'm talking like only to the screen, I cannot see people, and I cannot build relations also with pupils. So I think it's very important to teachers to really articulate their needs, to say, I want to see you because I want to feel the connection with you, work on our relations. And then children are more likely to be open and to put the camera on. And it's not said that when you have a camera on, you cannot move in your room. You can move, but still be present and be able to share emotions.
Sure, of course. Can I just sorry for asking this very specific question, but do you have any idea how to handle a situation in which you have to share a room with either your parents or your brother or sister, your siblings basically, or somebody else, or else you have to share your computer? These are very down-to-earth things, but they are real problems for many people.
I'll tell you, if you have to share a room with your dog, you're going to wear headphones like I have, because if she starts barking, I don't want everyone to hear it.
Right, you can't do that with cats, because cats usually just walk in front of your camera. All right?
Okay, I don't have a cat, but one of my friends who is also a teacher, she has to work in the kitchen, right? Because this is the room that she occupies. So she runs her lessons from the kitchen, and then her daughter cannot come down to have a meal because she would interrupt her. You know, they have breaks at different times. So this is the problem, but not working in the same room. No, I haven't heard of that case, but it must be a serious problem. Yeah.
I think it's a very important question. I mean, one of the crucial questions, because we can't talk about the consequences of the pandemic separately from economic status and social conditions of living, because there are people having a huge houses with 2 devices per person and each room for everyone, and there are people living, 5 people in 30 meters square. So I think it's absolutely crucial part. And talking about the well-being of kids, we have to remember about those differences. In Poland, it's very, very big.
All right. Okay. Are they? But in some parts of the United States, they are also quite big. And I remember this being a problem in the United States from the past debate.
Well, I can tell you that a colleague of mine was having trouble signing in and having a stable internet, and it turned out, we asked him to run a check on his system, and it turned out it was his problems were when his roommates were home and they were gaming. And so he had to work out a schedule with them so that during his work time, they weren't gaming. And then after that, they could just have the run of the show.
Right. Okay.
One of the things we've also done is, some students, we're not the poorest county in the state of Florida, but nearly 70% of our students are on some sort of based aid. So many of our students don't have access to laptops. They don't have their own personal laptops or internet service at home. And so what we did was open up different rooms, because our campus is pretty much closed at this point, opened up offices, rooms in the library where students could practice social distancing but have access to the technology. So even if they weren't able to have, the privacy in a shared residence hall or dorm or at their home, they would have some place to go to access their online courses.
All right, let's talk about
you can say something about cameras. In my case, many of my teachers' friends are knowing that students doesn't want to show or turn on the video, and in Poland we don't have some kind of regulation that you need to do that because you are at the lesson. But I think that many of the teachers forget about to explain, like Anna do. Okay, just I want to see you, I want to connect with you, I want to feel that you are the part of my classroom. Please turn on your camera. Most of our tools like Teams or Zoom or other application to connect with your students have that kind of function that you can have, for example, green screen for your own without the green screen plate. Just put your picture or background, and you don't need to show other things that you have. And the using the headphones or different microphone can be a solution with that.
Sure. All right, thanks very much. Let's have a look at a larger landscape now. Is there any support, or is it good enough? I'm speaking about support for teachers in that particular time. What kind of support do we have in Poland, or what kind of support do you have in the United States? What kind of different perspective do we have on that?
Well, I think in the US, we've relied heavily on our information technology offices, probably more so than we have in the past, for training, because as I mentioned earlier, teachers had to quickly create a platform if the framework for an online course wasn't built. They had a matter of a couple of weeks to do so. So we implemented a number of trainings specific to faculty. Getting back to Martin's point about academic integrity, we of course there's an increase in student conduct issues, but I think it's also important that we have clear expectations of of what is required of a student. And so in terms of support, one of the things that we instituted was a service called Lockdown Respondus. And so it will lock down your computer's browser. You have to take your quiz or test through this browser. It locks down everything, so a student doesn't have access to Google while they're taking a test. So there's all of these services that we didn't even know existed, things like Wander, where you can kind of create a platform, create an avatar.
Could you say the name of that service again? What is it called?
The one that locks down your browser is called Respondus. The other one is called Wander, WANDER, and it's a service that acts almost like if you were at a conference. It creates tables, and you have an avatar where you can go and talk to other people in different rooms, and so it kind of gives you the feel of being in a face-to-face experience without.
So it's a kind of technological support, but I also had in mind a sort of mental, perhaps for the teachers, methodological support, some kind of, assistance. Yeah, we're in difficult times, but we've got a group of people or an agency or whatever institution that can give you a helping hand if you're in trouble, in crisis, if you don't know what to do. But do we have anything like that in Poland by any chance? I don't think.
Oh, sorry, Marcin.
Okay. No. I thought that nobody wanted to share this information with us.
Clearly, there's a need for this, clearly.
There's a need for it, yes. There's a sort of a massive silence after this question. So what kind of support would you expect? What kind of support would you need?
In Marcin, you don't have you have muted microphone. Unmute microphone, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did notice you were speaking here. We didn't hear you, Martin.
I just said the silence was meaningful.
I'm sure you said something very important. It's just a start over again.
No, but I don't have that much experience from school at the moment, so I don't know if the teachers were offered. Probably not. If yes, then the help was in terms of, I don't know, technology. If some platforms were introduced to schools, then some trainings were delivered too, but not psychological, mostly technical.
What about methodological assistance? Not so much.
Łukasz, was there anything at school? I don't believe so.
You know, I think that it's the situation. It's new, not only for Polish teacher or Polish government, for all of the world, and I think that there's no good solution for that. At the last March in 2020, it was like sometimes some decision of our politicians or our ministry of ours, or my decision, my headmaster, etc., was something like the gorilla in the fog. So you know, it was like what we should do, what we should take, or how it should work, and that for second, I think that many of politicians forget about teachers, about mental health, about as Marcin said before, we have only the exams, we have testing, we have tests, and we make some exams, and we sometimes we totally forgot about people, about feelings, about well-being, and I think that
does the pandemic make it worse?
You know, in my opinion, no. I don't think it's like at the same level, but now it's better because right now we have 1 year of the lockdown. Around, for example, 2 months, plus minus, and you know, and right now, many of the associations or many of the people try to find the solution how to help, and I think that kind of solution will stay much more longer than pandemic and the things that we have right now.
Sure.
Yeah, teachers are looking for help, but on their own, right?
All right.
Yeah, I think you know, what would be helpful is more guidance on work-life balance, because many of us are working, some doing at-home work, or and also parenting. So they might have children at home instead of going to school, and trying to balance all of these things, you know, doing calls in between, you know, trying to feed your child, like Amy was doing earlier. So I think that there needs to be more guidance and assistance.
Where could that advice come from? Where could that guidance come from? Where would you expect it to come from, basically? Would that be an NGO sector? Would that be an academic sector, or a government or federal government? Or where would you look at?
I don't know. Here on campus, we have an employee benefit. It's part of our insurance that provides these kinds of services. And I have taken some of the courses, but to be honest, you know, it was kind of a top 10 list of things you should do. It wasn't really practical advice. And so I think we're all just trying to navigate this on our own, and whether we're doing it right or not, it's almost like, you know, the movie Groundhog Day. Every day is just starting over again. And you're kind of, at the end of the day, I usually go, whew, I made it another day. And I think everyone's path in this is different. Depending
but
on
it seems in that particular aspect, we are on the same boat in a way. I mean, everyone is trying to play this game individually, basically, on their own.
If I could add something, from conversations that we have with teachers, they appreciate a lot especially at the beginning, they appreciated a lot all those ready to use, for example, lessons, mostly lessons from our side, like from NASC side, lessons about the internet safety that they could use, but all lessons from all different topics. We have a project, it is called OSA IT Szkoła, which is based in a national educational network. It's a project that NASC operates. It's a governmental project, and within this we also tried to deliver most of resources that we could. I know that lots of also technology was delivered in following months of pandemic. Of course, very beginning, teachers felt very alone. We know from the reports that they used, like 90% of them used their own tools, their own laptops, their own internet connection. I think in months it changed, and I know that teachers really appreciated all the resources that were produced by very, very different institutions, non-governmental NGOs, also governmental institutions. So I think it was like a huge work done by many different sectors to give teachers a help, but also to give parents a help, because like you said, Rachel,
that's another story.
this combination of parental and remote work, we all deal with this. So we all need help, actually.
All right. Anyone would like to add anything about this particular?
Yeah. Because you mentioned Kahoot, we teach as an association different solutions. We use clickers, we use quizzes, and all these gamification methods where you implement competition, rivalry into education, which motivates students. They somehow feel like, having fun playing, but learning at the same time, and implementing all those active methods. This should be new quality in our Polish education in the times post-COVID.
All right.
And I was going to say that, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to look it up on Twitter without looking like I'm on my phone, but there are a couple of really good groups on Twitter or
well, you pressed the wrong button. Okay, you're back with us.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Teachers who have been working in the virtual sphere for several years, and I've been learning from them, looking at what they're posting, suggestions that they have out there. And so on Twitter, if you can just look around and maybe search for virtual, you'll find some resources there as well.
All right. So that's it about this particular point on our script. Now, quite a controversial thing, but also an interesting insight into how things have looked over the last 12 months or so. Do you think has anybody or anyone gained anything on COVID? In fact, I know that Łukasz has a lot to say about that. He's got a lot of experience on that particular aspect. So, Łukasz, could you please enlighten us a bit on this particular aspect of COVID? So, who did the best? Who actually used it for the betterment of their career or education?
Yeah, I think that it's the good time and place to say something positive in our debate about COVID. We are always saying only the minus. So
let's be on the bright side now.
Yeah, on the bright side. Okay, in my opinion, COVID situation help or even force, I can say, teacher to leave the own comfort zones. I know that it was difficult to adapt or to make our lessons online, our curriculum online, but it was also very big advantages to change our curriculum and to customize our lesson. But the digital skills that we earn will stay with us forever after the COVID. And I think that many of the tools we can use. After that, you meant like Kahoot, or I used all the time Mentimeter for whiteboard, Data.fi, or some other tools. And many of my teachers' friends doesn't know some kind of tools. And after pandemic, they learned about it, and okay, it's quite good. I can use it all the time, even if we came back to school. And I think that most of us want to came back to school. In my case, I'm just calculating the days where the time will came. But some of us doesn't think about it, how it looks like. So if you,
how different it will be.
Yeah, of course. If you collect the notes to your own home or to your on your desk, do you do the same? Or after you came after COVID, after pandemic, Probably no. For example, if you're walking around in your classroom, you do the same after pandemic? I think no. So the Teams solution, like OneNote in Teams or digital tools, can help us to turn around our education system. And I think that we can say stop and start from the very new beginning to new way of teaching.
All right, Catherine, how do you think your educational process, your university education, will change because of COVID?
Well, one benefit from COVID that we've seen is a drastic increase in the accessibility. I know a number of students that have had lifelong dreams of living in Hawaii or Boston and have taken a semester to live there while doing virtual school. Others have had different internship and job opportunities. I know that I wouldn't be able to be doing this particular internship with Gulf Coast Diplomacy without the pandemic. So I think that my college may actually be planning on having some sort of more flexible options for students to be able to study abroad and take different jobs and not be as physically tied down to campus as we were before.
Are you looking forward to these changes, or are you a bit afraid?
It's definitely nerve-wracking, absolutely. On the one hand, we have so much more. On the other hand, wow, we have a lot more to deal with. But I think that at the end of the day, it's very exciting to be able to have all of these new opportunities.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody would like to add anything to it? Which, in particular, the American, because Łukasz said about the Polish side. What about the American side in terms of teachers? What good will stay after the pandemic for the teachers?
Yeah, I kind of second what Catherine is saying in terms of accessibility. I think the state of education is probably going to be very different, at least for the next 5 to 10 years. I think schools that were able to transition quickly are going to be okay. I mean, there's been a number of schools who haven't been able to survive the pandemic. And, you know, students are anxious to get back to the class, the majority of students. But for a number of students, this works better for them. And I mean, online classes have always existed, but not at this scale. But students who have issues on the spectrum like autism, students who have attention deficit disorder who can't just physically sit in a class for 1 hour or 2 hours, have shown, you know, that they've succeeded more in this online environment. So I think combining some of these things that we've learned with a face-to-face environment will probably be seen for the next several years.
All right.
Okay, I want to ask you something. Sorry.
Yeah, sure, of course. And then no, question from Łukasz and then Jenna. Okay, Łukasz.
Okay. Question to all of you. Do you think that people will appreciate the online stuff like webinars, live streams, or something else? Because during the pandemic, we are used to it, to something like that, and we say, okay, it's quite good. We don't need to move to the, for example, to other city to do something like a trainings or invite a trainer to your school or other teacher. We have it online. And before the pandemic, I think that it was like not so popular. I don't know what is the United States cases, but it's like a question to all of you.
Well, I just finished a week-long, well, actually all three of us just finished a week-long conference from home, and we attended a conference in Washington, D.C. It's a conference that I'm used to going to every year. So having it online this year actually made me a little bit sad because I knew all of the things that I was missing. However, back in September, I attended from my home, I attended a conference in London about virtual education. And that was amazing because I would never have been able to get my office to pay for me to go to London to take the classes that I was able to do. So I think it's going to be a balance.
But you said that I knew what I was actually losing at some point, especially when it came, right? So that takes us to another question. I'm sorry, Łukasz, to sort of go back from the brighter side, but then again, I have to ask a negative question. Is there something like educational loss? Is there anything, is there a true meaning behind this term?
If I may, again, we're not in a classroom. We're a group that meets monthly. But for my group, it's been a gain, and I'm not going to say that we've lost, because what we've done is we've taken the opportunity to expose these youth to people who they never would have been able to meet otherwise. So we have speakers come in from Iceland, speakers come in from Kenya, and that is not their normal world. So for us, it's been a plus. And I think, yes, we're all missing things. Like last year, we did a virtual party for Catherine's class when they graduated from high school. But as part of that class, we also traveled to Bolivia and got to go to a llama farm. So it's different. And I think my hope is that the resiliency will shine through from all of this.
Right. Okay. Anyway, Anna, what did you think? Is there anything like a learning loss?
I would like to add something to what Jenna said, because I think we will have to go hybrid. Because Łukasz, it was a great question. Because, for example, let's compare indicators. Like we used to do a conference locally in some parts of Poland, and we could get, let's say, 150 people, 200 people in a room, because the room was not that big to have more than 200 people, and also it was not so easy to get regionally more than 200 people. And now we do same conference, of course not same, similar conference, and we get almost 1,000 people for 1 hour and a half. So actually now if we talk about efficiency of our work, we would say, wow, it's really fantastic, like our indicators show. But on the other hand, I think people are really, really stressed and tired with all those webinars and conferences. So it is very possible that in the following months, it will not be so much attended that it used to be in 2020 and beginning of 2021. Yeah. So talking about what we get and what we lose. I started with this really dark side, and I think we lose a lot, and I think we will have real problems in coming from this isolation, especially young people. We see that cyber threats are really more and more now. We see also the security threats are rising, like phishing, for example, and phishing is also very bad for kids, for young people who are buying things online. So we see all those bad things related to our being all the time online. But I would like, because we are like 10 minutes, yes, before we end, I would like to add something good, because talking about parents, because Łukasz was saying about teachers and this good thing that we lost from the teacher's side, but I would like to focus on the parental side. Like talking to parents, we know that they learned what kids really do online. Of course, not all of them, but many of them. Before we could ask parent, okay, what your child is doing online? And the answer was, is surfing, is scrolling the net. And now I can hear from parents that the child is playing online games, is communicating on chat, is watching TV, is watching, I don't know, Netflix or something. So like the knowledge of parents about what kids really do online, and the knowledge of parents that kids really move their social life online, that they don't necessarily kill time online, but they move their social life, their relations, and they develop also online. I think it will be one of the biggest chances after pandemic for me from this family point of view.
All right. Anybody else? Well, you know that after these debates are over, we're going to prepare a report summing up the conclusions and perhaps your suggestions. So let's spend the last 5-6 minutes of this meeting just shuffling over the conclusions that you might want to include in this report. So let's conclude so many points that we have already discussed. What would you like to see in that report from today's meeting? What would be your most important message to to go into that report. So just a three final conclusions now before we close the meeting from anybody who wants to say something.
Well, if the teachers seek help, well, it is to be found. There are NGOs like ours who deliver trainings. You just have to find it, right? There's a lot to learn. There is new approaches. They have already learned quite a lot in terms of technology. They have developed certain skills. They've learned some things about methodology. We mustn't forget that the research says that about 25% of students, or 20 perhaps, are quite happy with remote learning and not having to go to school. One of the students said, wow, at 1 p.m., I'm already at home, in my bed, and I've just had dinner. I don't lose time. Okay, so I like the idea. Not everyone is so happy that they have to go to school. Some of them have to commute for a long time. Some have, social anxiety. They like it the way it is. They have more time to prepare for these Polish exams, right? Which are important, right, to get to the next school. So there are also positive sides, yes.
All right. Any other conclusions or messages from today that you would like to leave and speak out clearly in that report?
And I'm thinking that we need to find some balance between the online and the offline life, and in education, typical our jobs, because not all of us are educators, and I think that the life balance between offline and online is most important thing that we need to remember. That's my conclusion of that.
All right, Jenna?
I would really like to emphasize the beauty that hybrid education can bring to us. So in our rush to go back to the normal, that we don't forget it and take advantage of those opportunities.
All right.
I don't think the students will allow teachers to go back to what was before. They live surrounded by technology, and now the teachers have to do it too, right? So,
Catherine, will you allow your teachers to go back to the old?
Absolutely not. Technology has saved quite a bit of time and money and travel costs for sure. And it provides new opportunities. So I think that emphasizing the hybrid balance is incredibly important here.
Okay. If that's all, if I can't see any hand raised up, so I assume that you've said what you plan to say. Thank you very much for this discussion, for this debate today. It was about digital well-being and cyber security. And let me just mention our speakers again before we leave. Jenna Melankan, Catherine McCracken, Rachel Hendricks, Anna Rywczyńska, Łukasz Gierek, and Marcin Mechla shared their experiences with us. We'll meet again in April. And next time we're going to talk about new competences, the competences of the future that will be required by the students and teachers, and basically in the education business. So thank you very much for today. And fingers crossed that we'll finally end up at the bright side of the whole thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.